So this is the initial homepage here. We call it the dashboard, where you as a user log in and you're seeing the events in this calendar function on the right that are specific to your job function, the things you care about. So if you're on the logistics side, you're seeing when containers are shipping or when containers are arriving. If you're in sales, you might see, customers that you need to follow up with, quotes that you need to follow up on, that kind of thing. So you can flag events within the system to show up on your calendar. And then when you hover over them, it gives you additional details about that item. And then you can click into it if I click into this container, it's giving me all the details about this container, where it is, what's on that container. So the logistics details about that container, I can click into the documents, view the documents, things like that. So that's the calendar function. There's also these alerts, which are also specific to the particular user. So there are maybe 100 or so different alerts available out of box. We can do custom ones as well. And you can kind of choose on a user by user basis which specific alerts are relevant to that user. So for example, if you're concerned with inventory levels or lots, so this would be if you're doing inventory tracking at the lot level, and those lots have an expiration date. So in the case of food or some perishable items, these would be lots that are expiring in the next 90 days, right? So if I click on that, this gives me any lots that I have sitting in inventory with an expiration date in the next 90 days, or they've already expired. So these are basically things that I should probably be selling at a discount because they're either have already expired or will be expiring soon. So those are kind of the examples of alerts, but really it can be anything that is potentially currently falling through the cracks. This is a way to avoid those type of problems. There's also graphical options here. This is just available in the new version, but any of these alerts can also be turned into graphs, pie charts, things like that. There's a QuickLinks area here, and this is customizable, where you can say specifically what are the most relevant things that you do on a daily basis, and you can link into them directly from the dashboard. And then there's a company news area where you can say share information with the rest of the company. So everyone is sharing the same company news information. The menu navigation is here on the left-hand side, and we'll start with, let's say, the products area. So if I click on products, initially this gives me a listing of all the existing products in the system. I can filter on any of the column headings. There's also images of the products available, and then you can drill down into them. If you want to add new products, you click on that plus button. And this is pretty much true throughout the system. You click on that plus button to add new of whatever thing you're in. But let's say we want to look at these sausages, for example. So I'll drill down into this product, and on the right-hand side, you'll notice there is a log, and this log keeps track of every change that's happened to this product, what user made that change, what field they changed, what they changed it from, and what they changed it to, and when those changes happen. So it's kind of an audit trail, and this exists pretty much throughout the system. There's an audit trail of what users are making changes, right? I'm going to hide that for the moment, and we'll just talk about the details that are being stored here at the product level. So you've got product ID, description of the product, the unit of measure in which that product is typically bought and sold. You can specify a reorder point here. So if you want the system to alert you if your inventory levels are low, you can set this reorder point, and then that's some of those alerts that we talked about on the home page will kick in. And these can also be tied in with your email too. So in addition to getting that alert on your home page, you can also get an email notification letting you know that your current stock levels have dropped below what you've specified as your reorder point. In terms of pricing, you can set default pricing for purchasing and sales. There's also a customer specific pricing. So you can say, okay, these are the different customers that we sell this product to. This is what each customer's price is. And if that customer has a special price, then when you create an order for that customer, it'll grab their special price instead of the default price. There's similar function on the purchasing side. So you can set sort of a default purchase order price, or you can say, these are the different vendors who we buy this product from. And you can have special pricing for each vendor too. There's also custom things that we often do. where you can set price levels, and those levels can be based on quantities. So in other words, you have a 5-case price, a 10-case price, a 20-case price, that kind of thing. Or you can link pricing with a customer group. So you have, say, a retailer price, a distributor price, and a wholesaler price, those kinds of things. And we can do other more custom things in that as well. But there's lots of flexibility in terms of the way the pricing works. This carton information is quite relevant if you sell goods or buy goods in cartons. And the reason why is you can specify a weight per carton, units per carton, the dimensions of the carton, and then the system will calculate the total CBM per carton. And this is actually useful in a couple areas of the system. One is like when you're creating purchase orders. If you're trying to, say, create a purchase order to fill a container, the system will tell you the total weight and total CBM on that PO and can warn you if you're, say, going over a typical 40-foot, you know, what you specify is the maximum CBM on a 40-foot container that you want to fill. The system can send you an email alert letting you know that you're about to go beyond that, for example. Same thing with the weight. So tariff information. So at the product level, you can specify a tariff code. There's a table in the system, and you're linking tariff codes with this product. And then once you do that, it brings in the HTS description and duty rate. That information gets used in a couple ways. One is in the ability, well, the system generates documentation to assist in the customs clearance process. So this information would show up on those documents, but also in calculating the costing, the system, you know, will calculate the landed costs on each individual shipment, and of course, duty being one of the components of that, so it'll automatically calculate that as soon as the product ships. You can also specify groupings around products. These are customizable, so you can set what different ways in which you might want to group the product, and based on that, the system will. You can pull up reports to say, you know, show me total sales into this industry versus another industry, or total sales of this group of product versus another group of product. So as long as you set these groupings up at the product level, that information is all available automatically out of the box. Instructions and comments. So there's handling instructions here. So if there's anything particular about the way this product should be handled, like if it's hazardous, needs to be kept refrigerated or frozen, or anything like that, you can specify these handling instructions here at the product level. And that information then shows up automatically on documentation that goes to both freight carriers and to warehouses. So the system generates documents for those third parties. So you can specify it here at the product level, and it will show up every time in those documents. There's also just like an internal comments area there as well. Synonyms is an area where you can specify nicknames that this product can go by. So you know, you have your own internal product codes and product descriptions and so on, but if there's just like a nickname that you call it internally, that's fine. You can specify the synonym here, and then when you're searching for that product in the system, you can just search based on the nickname too. Assemblies. So you can indicate if this product is made up of other products, you can indicate what makes up this assembly. So if you sell goods in kits, or you have an actual light manufacturing process, this is where you specify what components make up this assembly and how much of each of those components. And then there's a tool in the system called the job builder that allows you to, based on this, you can build an assembly. So it will then pull the component goods from inventory appropriately based on this bill of material that you set up here, and then increase the inventory on the finished good based on that. Documents and images allows you to upload and store files associated with this product. So that would be images of the product, spec sheets, labels, drawings, anything like that. You can upload files and attach them here. We talked about the customers area and how you can indicate special pricing for each customer. The other thing I want to mention here is you can update the customer product name. So if the customer calls the product something slightly different, or they have their own codes, you can indicate that in the customer product name area, and then that shows up on documents that go to that customer. So sales orders and invoices and quotes and things like that, they're seeing their specific product codes. Vendors has something similar as well. So we talked about, you got the purchase pricing, but also you can specify if the vendor has a different name for the product, or it's even in a different language. You can specify that here, and then that shows up on documents that go to that vendor. And this is area here where if you have a situation where you buy sometimes from trading companies or you buy from distributors, but you know who the manufacturer is, you can keep track of both parties. So here at the product level, you can keep track of both parties, and then on any individual purchase order, you can keep track of both parties. And that sort of follows all the way through the supply chain. So if you have a quality issue, customer comes back and says, there's a problem with this product that you sent me. If there's a quality issue, you can trace that all the way back, not just from the supplier that you bought it from, but actually from the manufacturer who produced it as well. The nice thing is at the product level here, there's actually a history of this product all listed down below. So you could flip between products here if you want to look at another one, but if you just want to look at the history on this specific product, this Release Explorer tool, for example, would give you a total sales history, gives you every sale of this product, the status of that order, the last time it was updated, who the customer is, how much they ordered, the price that they paid, when you shipped it to them, the warehouse that you shipped from. All that information is down here below. So this is like the sales history. This Venture Explorer is the purchase history. You've got, current inventory, sales history, purchase history, invoices, quotes, opportunities, kind of the total historical picture of this product is available down below. And then you can drill down into any of these things too. So let me just sort this by date. So for example, in this Venture Explorer, these are purchases, the purchase history, and I can drill down into each of these to get a picture of the financials too. So in this case, this is a shipment of 400 cases that shipped out in August. That's the container that it came in on. And I can drill down into the analysis on this specific transaction. Now this is actually closed. So we can see we ordered 500. Okay, no, this order is allocated. So we ordered 500, 400, they shipped us 400. No, we ordered 500, they shipped us 400. And then you can see our cost per case in this case is $55.65 per case. So where's that number coming from? It's based on the purchase price that was on the PO here, which is $52.50. But then there's also including any additional costs that also need to be considered here. So duty, custom broker fees, insurance costs, freight costs, warehousing, packaging, storage. All these things you have a combination of estimates and actuals that are also being considered here. So once those costs are all taken into account, then it gives you your actual true latest projected cost per case or per unit. So that's kind of the tracking and management at the product level. Just to look at the customer level, there's something kind of a similar area here. So if we were to go into a given customer, let's say this customer, Three Brothers, for example, you have the ability to manage details about that customer up in the top area here. Obviously, all the context associated with that customer, the different products that you sell this customer. And this is going to give you one row per product that you sell that customer, and then it gives you the most recent price that customer paid as well. You can upload and attach documents here, store their credit information. You can set credit limits on each customer in this way. When you place orders, or when that customer places an order, it will check their open balance against that current order and give you a warning if it's going to put them over their credit limit. But what I was going to mention is down below, there's similar information here. So we have the sales history. That Release Explorer is the sales history for this customer, what products we've sold them, quantities, pricing, when it shipped out, that kind of thing. Invoice history, sales order history, quote history, even the purchases. So if you have purchase orders that are linked to this customer, you can see a status of those purchase orders, the last time they were updated, who the supplier is, the pricing, quantities, when they're supposed to ship, that kind of thing. So that's the customer level. There's very similar information at the vendor level. You have the ability to sort of drill down into vendors to get the history on a vendor as well. But let's start and talk maybe a little about some of the CRM modules here. The first one being this Opportunity. And this is actually quite a flexible area in the system. It's a way of keeping track of communications with yourself and customers. Could just be internal communications too, but most people use it to keep track of communication with customers. So you can specify the different types of opportunities that you want to keep track of. This is our default options. So it's usually pricing requests or sample requests, that kind of thing. So let's say that it's a pricing request that they have sent us. So they're interested in getting pricing on some of the items that we sell. I'll just say one other thing for sample requests here too. You can specify, if you normally send samples to a customer, you can say, specify that the sample request, and when you send that out, if there's any kind of testing that they do, either themselves or through a third party, and you get the results of that testing back, you can link the results of that sample request with the initial request. And so you kind of have a history of everything related to that sample in one place. But for this example, let's say it's product pricing that we're concerned with. It's going to pre-fill my user ID as the person who's entering this. But if we want to, we can assign this to someone else in the organization. So let's say we assign this to Bovit. Now, it'll show up on his calendar as an event that he should be following up on. When you specify a due date, he will also receive email alerts. This is configurable, but he can receive email alerts letting him know that he needs to respond to this customer request within this date range. And there'll be a history on his user of the things that he needs to work on. So let's pick a customer, and let's say we use this Three Brothers company that's doing the request. It date stamps when the request is coming in, and it sort of pre-fills a due date, but you can adjust that due date. Again, that'll impact the status on this too. And then you can put any notes. So if this is from an email, you can copy and paste the email in here, or just put your own internal notes. And then we're going to choose what products this customer is inquiring about. So let's say we pick those sausages that we were just looking at earlier, and he's interested in possibly purchasing 500 cases. And if he has any additional documentation, like requirements, if he has specifications that the product needs to meet, or drawings, if this is a new product that they're inquiring about and they provided drawings or something, you can upload and attach those drawings here, or any documents associated with this opportunity. There's also a document that gets produced here. It's called the opportunity document. Different ways in which this can be used. The default way in which it gets used is to specify a RFQ, or request for quote. So I can basically take this customer request and email this out to one or many vendors and say that I'm looking for pricing back from them on 500 cases of sausages. So, and then you can track that information that's coming back from the supplier as well. But that's the RFQ document, and then this is going to link up with the sourcing activities. So let's go into the sourcing area here, and let's say we want to create a new sourcing. So in other words, now we're receiving pricing back from one of these suppliers. So I'll pick which vendor this is related to. Let's say it's company Ban Rice. And now I can link this with an opportunity. I don't have to. You can just manage these sourcing activities separate from the customer opportunities or the pricing request. But in this case, I'm going to link it with the opportunity that we just created. So that's this one here. And then now it pre-fills all the details that it knows about this already. So what user is working with the customer, who the customer is, the products that they're interested in. I'm just going to enter the cost that the vendor is quoting me. So let's say that they're going to quote us $45 per case, and that's going to be, let's say, FOB Malaysia. I just mentioned one other thing about this, which is these sourcing activities can happen directly. The vendor can log directly into a vendor portal and access these sourcing activities too. So there's another video that was done about the vendor portal. So if you want to check that out, I would. But you can have the vendor log in directly. They can check, as they're receiving these price requests from you, they can just come in and fill out their pricing, and then it's available for you. So you don't have to come back and do this manually. You can also generate a purchase order directly from here. So if you want to take that vendor quote and create a PO out of it, you can do that. You can upload and attach any documentation that you receive from the vendor. So if they send you an actual quote document, you can upload that and attach it. And there's a tool here that allows you to do an analysis on this vendor quote too. So we call this a price estimator, but this is the ability to take, in this case, they quoted us $45, FOB Malaysia, but then there's other costs that need to be considered here when we consider what our true landed cost is going to be. So there's calculations here that are happening within the Excel spreadsheet. You can set up these formulas ahead of time. You can also manually enter these costs if you want to. If you have an idea of what some of these costs are going to be, you can enter those, and then it recalculates our total cost and our total cost per unit. So now once all these things are considered and we factor in a markup, which you can make adjustments to as well, it's coming back and suggesting to us what price we should be quoting the customer at, given all the costs that are going into this. So this worksheet, we call this the price estimator tool. This worksheet gets saved and associated with this sourcing activity. So you can always come back into this later. If it tells you who created it and when, and then if somebody's gone in and made changes, it keeps a record of the last person to make changes as well. So this worksheet gets stored along with this vendor quote, and you have a history now at the product level. Of course, you have a history of every vendor that's giving you pricing on that product. You have a history at the vendor level of all the different products this vendor has quoted you on. So there's kind of traceability around all these sourcing activities as well. Now we can take this vendor quote and then convert that into a customer quote as well. So this would be, again, for situations where you're direct shipping, or even if you're specifically ordering a product for a particular customer, you can link all these things together. They don't have to be linked together. These things can exist on their own, but there may be some benefit in linking them, especially in those type of scenarios. So let's say I want to create a new quote. I'll take this. I'll click the plus button here to say I want to create a new quote, and I will choose which customer we're quoting. Let's say it's this Three Brothers company. And now I can link this with a sourcing activity. So if I click this, it brings up all those sourcing activities. This is the one that we just created. I'll say okay. And now it is pre-filling all the details that it already knows about this, including the product and everything else. And we can specify what price we want to quote the customer, which, by the way, that pricing estimator sheet that was in the sourcing activity, you have the ability to save a target price back in that tool. If you do that, then it will pre-fill the price that you're quoting the customer with the target price that you saved from the sourcing activity. One other thing here is, if you want to, you can create a sales order directly from here as well. So if the customer says, okay, they want to go ahead and order that, you can create the sales order directly from here. There's a quote document that the system generates too that can be sent to the customer. This is the default template, so that gets emailed out, and you can send that to the customer, and you have a record of it in your email too. Yeah, so let's say we want to go ahead and we'll create a sales order directly from this quote. You don't have to do that. You could do that manually from the orders area here, but I'm going to go ahead and do that, and it tells me here I created a sales order, and that's the order there. It also changes the status of that quote, so you have a history of the fact that the customer in fact did order that. So that's one of the advantages of creating the sales order from the quote, is now you have the link in place to tell you that the customer took that quote that you sent them and they accepted, or they requested an order to be placed. So this is the sales order area, and it pre-fills with sort of all the details that it already knows from the quote, who the customer is, their address information, the user who's doing the data entry, who the sales rep is. You can set this as a consignment order. So this would be if you're going to be shipping the goods to the customer before you're billing them for that, you can ship it to them, and then it will bill them only once they say they've sold it, or you can set a specified number of days in which the bill gets generated automatically. Terms and conditions, or terms and remarks, allows you to apply discounts or additional charges. The payment terms will come in automatically from the customer level. but you could change them here. Any remarks that you want to appear on the order itself would be there. The line details are filling in from the quote. Remember, we were saying before, it's giving us the total CBM, the total weight, and the total number of pallets on this order as well. And we can pre-allocate this with a purchase order if we wanted to at this point. So by that, we mean if we have open purchase orders with different suppliers that we want to link with this sales order. So even before they've shipped it, we want to link those things together. We have the ability to do that. Like if you click on this, it gives you a listing of all the open purchase orders for that product, and we could choose one to link to if we wanted to. The documents and images area allows you to upload and attach documents here too. So if the customer sends you a PO, if you want to link that in here, you can. Additional information would be if you can set a promise date, you're saying to the customer, you know, we're promising that you'll have it within 60 days, the Incoterms on a sale, particularly for an export, where the goods are loading, that kind of thing. So this is the sales order management. There's a document here too, like an order confirmation that you can send to the customer, or a pro forma that gets created. And that's the default template, so that we would email out to the customer. And then back in the system here, if you want to keep a record of the fact that the customer confirmed the order, you can do that by just changing this order to SO issued. There are different options here in terms of creating purchase orders. So you could auto-generate a purchase order right from here. And this would be, if you know who you're going to be buying the goods from, if you check that box, it will look at your default vendor. Actually, no. Okay, so this is interesting. So there's a little bit more to this. So in this case, because we had a sourcing activity that resulted in a quote, and that quote resulted in a sale, when I click that auto-generate purchase order button, it goes all the way back to the original vendor quote that we got, and it knows what vendor to pull from and what the pricing is going to be on that. So it sort of traced those things all the way back. If I had not done the automation all the way through, then it would just look at my default vendor for that product and create a purchase order for them. But let's say, okay, we'll go into that purchase order that was created, and it's, you know, filled in the details that it knows about that. We can specify where it's shipping from, destination, so on. Discounts and additional charges from the PO. This is the item itself. If the vendor sends you any kind of documentation, so if they send you, say, confirmation of the order or something, you can upload that and attach it. You can specify due dates around any activities in the production cycle too. So if you're requiring that the supplier send out samples before shipping, or that there's third-party testing that needs to happen, you can put date requirements around this, and the system will send email alerts. If these things have not been completed, the system will send email alerts about those. I mentioned the vendor portal earlier. The vendor also has the ability to log in through the portal and update this information, so they can upload and attach testing results or documentation to indicate that the samples have shipped, that kind of thing. But the date requirements here will also trigger email alerts. And then additional purchase order information is if the vendor's promising what date it's going to ship or something like that, you can indicate that here too. So this will, of course, generate a purchase order document, and I'll click on that. This is what would go to the vendor, and the same way the purchase order gets emailed out. Same way the sales order gets emailed to the customer, the purchase order would get emailed to the supplier. And then once the supplier confirms that order, we can change the status to PO issued. And that's just basically keeps a record of the fact that the vendor actually did confirm the order. If this is a single shipment, so one purchase order, one shipment, you have the ability to create a container right from the PO. If this is going to be multiple shipments, you can drill down into the line item itself and break out a shipping schedule. So in this case, we said it was 500 cases, but if this was actually, say, 250 cases first and then another 250 later on, you can break out the shipping schedule here. But if it's a single purchase order, single container, then you can create the container right from here. If you were to do it manually instead, in the logistics area, you can create a new container, but I'm going to go ahead and create a container right from here. So when I click that, it basically says, are you sure I'll say fine. And it's telling me, okay, it created a container and it assigns the container like a dummy container number, which is equal to the PO number initially. And you can use this sort of during the staging process while the container is still at source to start tracking information about the container, uploading documents, applying information about the container. And then when you get the actual container number, you would enter that. But so this first tab here, Ventures, is showing us what products or what orders are on this particular container. Now, we use this term venture to mean this first piece is the purchase order number. So 8256, that's our PO number. The star one references it's the first product on that order, sausages, and the first shipment. So there's a shipment of 500. Now, if this shipment was, let's say they didn't ship us 500, they shipped us only 400, then we have the ability to say create back order for the difference. So if I click this button, and let me just scroll over here so you get a full picture. If I click this button, create back order, then it will create a second shipment on that PO. And for the 100 balance. So now if I were to say I want to add additional items or additional orders to this container, I click the plus button, and this down here shows me a listing of all the available ventures that have not yet shipped. So in fact, this is the second shipment of that same PO, the 100 cases. Notice it just created a back order for the balance, and that venture number is 8256 star 1 star 2. Second shipment didn't ship yet. So if I wanted to, I could add other items onto this particular container, or I can just say, you know what, I'm happy with just the one item, that's all they're shipping us, and that's fine. Notice when we do that too, it recalculates total CBM, total weight, and total number of pallets. In the general info area, here's where all the logistics details are going to go in. And if we have an actual container number, we can indicate that, and you can set this to auto track. So if you set that to auto track, and by the way, there's a separate video about this. It's called container tracking. So there's a whole video dedicated to this, but there's a third-party service that we utilize to track that container. It's called Vision, and that allows actual door-to-door tracking on that container. So all the way from the supplier's facility, the ocean piece, and then the trucking at the destination port as well, either to a warehouse facility or direct to the customer if you're shipping direct. So if you set that to yes, there's that tracking service. There's additional cost for that, but if you otherwise you're maintaining the information, the logistics information manually. I'm going to assume for this purpose of this demo, I'm just going to be managing it manually. Here's if there is quality control, whether the approval needs to happen. I mean, you can specify whether or not the actual QC approval has happened or not. We can indicate a shipping company. Then when the container actually does ship, you're just going to specify a date in transit, and it will then automatically change the status of this container to in transit. Now, I would leave it in that status up until the point that we're actually ready to receive the container, in which case I would do another status change here and just say, I'm receiving it on this date, and then it changes status to move to warehouse. Now I can choose which warehouse I'm receiving it into. If it's a direct, I would choose direct, but if it's actually going to be received into a real warehouse, I just pick which warehouse it's coming into. And then this will now show as part of my inventory. So we'll look at that in one moment. The rest is kind of additional details about the container itself. FDA status, custom status, what type of container it is, where it's shipping from and to, those details. If there's transshipment information, you can keep track of that as well. There's documentation that the system will generate here related to this container. So the first piece is, if you're using a third-party service for customs clearance, there's this document that we call the broker instructions. So this is actually two worksheets. The first is what we call the importer security filing form. So this is for the ISF entries. This needs to be filed prior to the goods actually shipping, but the system will generate this document, which is everything that's necessary for the ISF filing, like where the container was loaded, where it's shipping to, description of the goods, how they're expected to be classified, the duty rate you expect to pay. All that is pulling from various areas in the system. So that's available for the ISF entry. And then there's this broker instructions for the customs clearance piece. So when you send the shipping documents to your freight forwarder or customs broker, this document goes as a cover letter with those. It kind of summarizes the shipment. Very, very similar information to the ISF entry, but it's designed to go with the actual shipping documents. There's also a warehouse arrival and delivery instructions document. So two different documents here. So this is if you're arranging for the trucking when the container arrives at the port of arrival, if you're arranging for the trucking to get this container to the warehouse or to the customer, there is a document here which we call delivery instructions, which is designed to go to that trucker. So basically just says, these are the products on the container. Here's the quantities. This is the carrier that we specified that we want to use. Pick up. Here's where to pick up. Here's where to drop off. Any special instructions to the trucker would appear there as well. And that gets emailed out to the trucking company. There's also this warehouse arrival notice. So similar, very similar document, but this would be designed to go to the warehouse as a advance notice to let them know that there's a container arriving and what's on that container and who's bringing it, and special instructions to the warehouse would appear there as well. So that gets emailed to the warehouse. So now back in this container area here, you have any of the documentation that the system has created related to this container would be here, but also you can upload and attach documentation if you want to. So if you wanted to upload an attached bill of lading, commercial invoice, packing list, certificate of origin, any other inspection sheets, any other documentation related to this container, you can upload it here. You've now got it all in one place, and you can email out from here too. So I just got to scroll to the right to show you this. So if you can select all the documents, check, email selected documents, and then you can send that out to freight forwarder or the customer or whoever. Or it could be internal as well, but we have the ability to email the documents from there. This container events, this will only appear if the automated tracking is set to yes. So this was, like I was referring to earlier, if you're using that Vision service, this would give you all of the events on that container. And that gives you, downloads the planned events as soon as you say the tracking is yes. And then as the actual events happen, like container ships, container arrives, these things, it gives you the actual date that they happened, and that can also trigger email alerts along the way as well. And then you have the ability to apply costs or estimated costs at this point. And some of these costs will be automatically calculated. They can be calculated. There's a table in the system where you can maintain freight rates, for example. So let's say $6,000 is our typical cost from, say, China to New York or China to LA. So that will pre-fill, but you have the ability to override it here. Cargo insurance, drayage costs. So you can specify these estimates as well manually. And what the system is going to do is going to take these estimated costs and apply them to all the items that are on this container proportionally. And you can specify how the costs get applied to, but without overcomplicating it. Typically it would be applied based on CBM. So in other words, whatever products are taking up more of the container, they also then are absorbing more of the cost of that container. So now when we look at the landed costs on each of these individual items, we're seeing not just what the cost of the product itself, but it's also considering all these other costs that have gone into it. So that's the creation and management on containers. Now we already received this in, so I'm going to go into inventory so we get a picture of what the inventory looks like. And this is going to give me all of the inventory that's currently in stock, and it's broken out by lot. So I didn't mention this, but you have the ability to take a container and specify multiple lots within that container. So I'm going to search by product ID, and that was, oh shoot, I can't remember exactly what the product ID was, but anyway, so you've got, well, I can sort this by date received. That'd be an easy way to get to it. Yeah. So let's see, date received. Not sure, but so anyway, it's breaking down each of the lots that are on that container individually, and then we have the ability to drill down into those lots to get additional details. So for example, this is a lot. Okay, so it starts with the venture number 8240 is our PO, first line item, first shipment. This is a shipment from this furniture company of 100 of these coffee tables. So it's telling me the container number is, the lot number is pre-filling with the container number. It was received in on September 27th into that warehouse. And that's the product. And this is our landed cost. Let me move this over. So this is our actual landed cost per unit on this specific shipment. So $23.49 per unit is our cost of those tables. Now I can drill down into this by clicking on the venture number to get the details of that costing. So $23.49 is our cost. That's based on $16.50 per unit was our PO price. And then these are all the accruals. So in this case, we had $600 in drayage, $99 in duty. Those are the only costs on this particular one, but we can see a breakdown of what all those costs are. And it's actually proportionate, again, because if there was other items on that container, it's only the portion of those costs that apply specifically to that item. So that's why each individual lot is going to have its own unique costing details. Now we can take that information and use it in reports in different ways. So if you wanted to see, for example, what your total average cost is of all the goods in inventory, it would take a weighted average of all the lots of any of these individual products to come up with that average landed cost. But I think it's more valuable to look at it on a per lot basis. So you can see actually, in fact, what each lot costs you. There's also the ability to drill down into any of these items. Let me just move this over again. You have the ability to drill down into any of these items to get the history on them. And I was looking for one maybe that has a little history here because I'm noticing, so you have the on-hand quantity and the available quantity. Those are two different numbers. And let me just explain the difference between those. The on-hand quantity means exactly how much is sitting in inventory. The available quantity is going to take the on-hand quantity, but remove any allocations that might exist against the existing inventory. So for example, if we had 100 pieces on hand of this particular product, but 50 of them were allocated to a customer, then the available quantity would only be 50 because that's the only amount that's remaining to sell to someone else. So the system allows you to have those allocations in place, which basically puts inventory on hold until the customer is ready to accept it. So yeah, so you have the ability to drill down into these. I'll just give you an example here. So this one, if we click into this, we see there's 1,000, we ordered 1,000, we received 1,000. There's 500 allocated to a customer and 500 still remaining. So if we go into the lot details, we can see of this lot, there's 500 allocated to this customer on that order. This is actually part of a delivery that hasn't shipped out yet. But also if there was sales against that lot, you would see a history of the sales here. Any inventory adjustments, if any user had gone in and made adjustments for damages and things like that, there's a history of that as well. So you have the ability to kind of drill down into any individual lot to get the total lot history there as well. So this tool is pretty good. This is called inventory management. This is pretty good for keeping track of existing inventory. There's another tool in the reports area that we call Venture Explorer that allows you to view goods not just in inventory, but also goods that are coming in. So these could be open purchase orders, containers that are on the water, containers that may have been loaded but didn't ship yet. So it's more of a total picture of everything. So if I wanted to see, for example, what is my aluminum? What do I have coming in for aluminum? Filtered by that, it gives me history. It gives me all activity here. So these are containers. This is a container on the water. This container didn't ship yet. This container is already closed, meaning completely sold. This is inventory that's in the warehouse. And for each of these, you have the quantities, ship dates, containers. We scroll over here. Yeah, you've got costing information. If it's linked to a customer, if this inventory is linked to a customer, you can see who the customer is as well. When the customer is expecting delivery, that kind of thing. Also, one other thing, there's a link here into marine traffic. So this is similar to the vision integration where we're getting the logistics details pushed into the system. This is more of a pull. So this is saying for this specific vessel, I can see on a live map exactly where this container is, right? So if I click on that, it shows me, and this is of course in the middle of the ocean, but if I zoom out a little, I'll get a better picture of exactly where this container is. Yeah, this tells you like the speed that the container is traveling, when it's expected to arrive, but it kind of gives me a picture. This is off the coast of Japan, you know. Some people that's overkill, but you do have the ability to sort of drill down in to get a picture of exactly where that container is. That's a free service, by the way. There's no additional cost for that. But with any of these things, so anytime you apply a filter, or actually before you apply filters, you can stack filters on top of each other, and then you can just export the results to Excel. This is true anywhere you see grids in the system. You can just shoot the data itself out into an Excel format where you could manipulate it further or email it, or do anything you do with an Excel spreadsheet, of course. So that is the sales side of this transaction. Now that order, let me just make sure of this. If I go back into that sales order, I think because that order was pre-allocated, we already knew the customer that it was going to. That order should already be allocated against stock. So I'm going to double check that. If I click into this area, ready to allocate, this is going to give me a listing. Okay, this is already in a delivery, but I'll just explain if it wasn't, what a person would do here. So if you were shipping from stock, you would come into the area here where you're going to allocate this order. This shows you what items are on the order. And then if it had not already been allocated, it would tell me what warehouses inventory was available to ship from. So I could just pull from a particular warehouse if I wanted to, or I can drill down into the inventory details, meaning show me all the available lots, and I could choose a specific lot if we wanted to. So this is broken down by venture, and actually within a venture, you have the different lots, the warehouse that they're in, how much is available, and you could allocate against a specific one. So if you were doing that, you would select release to logistics, which means we're ready to ship out. There's another option here too, which is called final match. So that option is designed for if you have a sales order that you want to link to inventory, but you don't want to ship that inventory out right away. You just want to make sure that no one else sells that. You can set the status of that order to final match. It will put the inventory on hold specifically for that customer, and then not allow someone else to sell it. So in this case, as I said, the actual allocation process happened automatically for us because it was a direct container. The allocation process happened automatically, and it created a delivery that I can now deliver out to the customer. So this is, the idea here being, so delivery can be, in this case, it's a little deceiving because we're shipping direct. But if this was a delivery from the warehouse, we could include one or many other sales orders in this delivery, and then create paperwork for the trucking and for the picking of this particular delivery. This is a truckload going out to one or many customers. So this is showing us what orders are on this, who the customers are, what the products are, total weight, total CVM, total number of pallets in that delivery. General information allows you to specify dates or priorities on a delivery. You can indicate what carrier, what freight carrier you're going to be using. Then there's documentation around these deliveries as well. So first off, if you're using your own trucking from a warehouse, there's a tool called a route plan that allows you to, this is designed as a document that would go to the driver, that you would hand to the driver to say, okay, these are the stops that need to be made. And this is the order in which we want you to make them. So you can kind of play around with the spreadsheet and move the orders themselves around. So you're telling the driver in which order they should be doing the deliveries. If you're using third-party trucking, there's a bill of lading document that gets created along with a warehouse release. So this is, so again, two documents here. It's an Excel spreadsheet with two different worksheets. One is the bill of lading. So this is designed to go to the trucker to specify where they're picking up and dropping off, the weight of the weight of the product in the truck. And then there's an inventory release form here too, which this is designed to go to the warehouse where you're asking them to pull specific inventory for this order to ship to that customer. Any special instructions to the warehouse would appear there too. There's also a packing list document. This would be one per customer. So again, if you've got multiple customers on this delivery, it would create a packing list for each. But this is similar to the invoice, but without the pricing. This is basically everything that you're shipping to that customer. And then also you have the ability to upload and attach documentation here too. So of course, all the system generated documents will be here, but you could upload and attach proof of delivery or any other documents that you might be receiving back in from the warehouse. In the general info area, we can specify a date shipped. So this is going to, by default, also be the invoice date, and that will create an invoice associated with that delivery, which I can now click into. The invoice that the customer is going to get is also the one that's coming here from VISCO, but this is where the integration with the accounting system comes in too. So if I click in, this is the invoice document, of course, that the customer sees. Loads as a PDF, so you can email that out to the customer and they would pay against that. You could tack on additional charges here if you wanted to. So if you want to check on a freight charge or labor costs or anything like that, you can. But this is where the status of the invoice. So initially when this invoice gets created in VISCO, it has a pending status, meaning that invoice exists in VISCO only. If you change that status to posted, and you can do this individually on an invoice by invoice basis, there's also a batch function that allows you to do that. When you do that, it takes that invoice and pushes it to the accounting system. So from VISCO standpoint, once it's posted, we're really done with it. The receiving of payment happens on the accounting side. The aging of receivables happens on the accounting side. That's kind of it from VISCO standpoint. We're done with it once it's posted. Similarly, there's another integration point on the payable side. This is what we call the cost entry in VISCO. So costs would be any bills that you're receiving in from vendors, or at least any bills that are kind of related to cost of goods sold that you're receiving in from vendors would go in through here. So if I click this plus button, I'm going to say I want to add a new vendor bill. I'll choose who the vendor is. Let's say it's this ABX company, the vendor's invoice date, a reference number, and then we're going to choose what type of cost it is. So to do that, I click the show details, pick a cost type. Let's say it's ocean freight, for example. And then I'll put the amount of the bill. So let's say it's $5,000 for ocean freight. Now it knows, because it's ocean freight, it assumes I want to distribute that cost by CBM, meaning whatever, and I'm going to apply this to a container. There's different ways you can apply cost, but for ocean freight, let's say we want to apply it to a container, and I'll pick which container I want to apply this to. So let me just sort this by date. I'll pick this one. Now this one, of course, only has one item in it, so it's going to apply all $5,000 to that one item. But if this was a container with many items in it, it would split that cost proportionally. So again, whatever's taking up more of the container also gets more of the cost. Now, the same way we're posting invoices over to the accounting system, we also have the ability to post bills or costs over to the accounting system. So as soon as I push that button, that pushes the cost over to accounting, and then we're actually making payments from the accounting system. This from just the same way that we're sort of done with an invoice once it's posted, we're also done with the bill once it gets posted. From that point, the accounting side of it is all handled from the accounting system. But really, you have good options from a reporting standpoint in VISCO on the financials of that individual transaction. So probably the best report for that, we call the gross margin detail report, which allows us to pull up a history. I'm going to say, show me quantity in cases. And let's say I want to look at this for the year 2021 from January through today. So this is going to load an Excel spreadsheet. Most of the reports in the system are Excel based. And there's different ways you can run this. So I could say, give me profit by customer, profit by sales rep, profit by product, by vendor. We can also do custom things here too. But let's say we want to run this by product, for example. And I could say summarize by selection. And by that, I mean, show me one row for every product, give me total sales and total costs and total profit by product, so kind of summarizing by selection. Or I can run it by invoice and then say subtotal by selection. So if I do that, then it returns one row for every invoice. Okay, so these are the sausages here. So for each of these are telling me all the different invoices that I have so far this year. So this is the one that we just did. That's our invoice date. That's the sales order number. That's the sales rep who sold it. That's the PO that it came from, that venture number, who bought the product, what warehouse we shipped out of, the invoice number, the product, the customer, the vendor. We have our sales, which is from the invoice. And then we have our total costs, and then our gross profit in dollars on that invoice and as a percentage. So the key thing here is that this cost number, that's not just the cost that we pay for the product, remember. So if I scroll out to the right, we've got all the other costs that have gone into that. So we have insurance costs, we have drayage costs, duty, any of the other costs are sort of broken out here, so you get a true picture. That's the cost of the product itself. So you're getting a true profit number. That gross profit is once all the costs have been considered. Now in this case, remember we ran it by product, so it's giving me a sum of all the sales of sausages for the year. We have our total sales, total costs, and then our total gross profit in dollars and gross profit as a percentage. And then we can compare this product against other products to kind of figure out what the more profitable products are. So again, I think there's other ways you could run this. We said by sales rep, by customer, by vendor, to figure out, focusing on the most profitable aspects of the business and helping maintain those focus. So that's kind of a brief overview. I would say there are other videos that deal with specific custom reports that are more particular to one industry over another, but I just try to keep it more generic for this video.